Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. We got a lot to cover in today's video. We're going to be talking mostly recruiting, but also with spring practice from other programs. I've been watching every single program that I possibly could, amongst other teams that I think may kind of pose a threat to Tennessee, either on our schedule or, like on a national stage as far as getting into that playoff picture. And I got to see NC State do their spring game yesterday. And, I was pretty impressed with their offense. I think that they could pose some problems for defenses, maybe not necessarily too much hours, but they look good, okay? And I would say that they've got a problem on defense. So if you are a betting person and you want to put some money on Nico to win the Heisman, I would say to do it really before the season starts, maybe even before our spring game starts, because I think that Nico is going to show out. But definitely do it before that game, okay? I want to say like the third game on our schedule, but it's the first real test for Nico and for this team. And a lot of people think that NC State is going to be great, but what I'm seeing from them is a team that Tennessee is going to have a field day scoring with. I would say that we might put up, at least 30 points, and it's probably realistically going to be more because just in watching their spring practices and things like that, I can tell that up front, they're nowhere near any SEC team, and especially not Tennessee. So if you want to put some money, if you want to make some money off of Nico's Heisman race, going ahead and put that bet in earlier rather than later, because in that game, he's going to show up and show out. And that's probably like when his Heisman odds are going to be a lot less favorable if you are a betting person. But I also got to see Clemson. And I had to say this because we will admit when we're wrong on this channel. I think that Sammy Brown, who was the 5-star linebacker from Georgia that went up to Clemson, he looks really, really good. And now their new defensive coordinator is Mickey Kahn, who we know pretty well just from being down here in Georgia. He coached at Grayson and he got that program up to a national level. And, being able to coach up against him, I can tell you that he's really, really good at what he does. Looks like they're going to be bringing a whole lot of pressure, in the forms of blitzes and things like that. So look out for Clemson's defense to be a lot better than people anticipated. And maybe they can challenge a team like Georgia in that opening game here in Atlanta. I think that they've got a pretty good, shot if they can get some good production from the quarterback position. That's where things are a little bit iffy at. I don't see the best decision making right there, but that offense pretty much is what it has been since they've been winning national championships and things. So I think that they will be a team to be reckoned with. Maybe not necessarily, a team that we would have to worry about, but I would say that some teams, most teams will probably have a lot of trouble with Clemson. The one thing that I did not see from them was a good offensive line. And that kind of got me to thinking, with a guy like David Sanders, with Clemson's spring game being yesterday, David Sanders was not there. So what that tells me is that, with him, I believe, getting closer to the end of his process, and it's pretty much between us and Clemson, the simple fact that he didn't even go to their spring game says a lot, especially because he's going to be back up in Knoxville next weekend. So I think that Tennessee is really in the driver's seat as far as being able to land a commitment from the big-time 5-star offensive tackle. He's the best offensive lineman in this entire class. And just looking at his frame, right? If you look at this picture right here with him, Travis Smith, and Juan Gaston, who are both, two Westlake players, and, they're very highly touted. And we'll talk about them here in just a minute. But you can see the size difference. You can see how well put together he is. Reminds me a lot of Tyrone Smith. Once he was coming out of high school, he ends up going on to USC. But it's very similar as far as like their body type, their skill set, things like that. But yeah, I think that we are in a really good position with David Sanders. I didn't really feel this way after listening to him speak with VolQuest yesterday, but now just recognizing that, I think, man, we are in a great position. And I think that we will end up landing him in about a month or so. I think that he's done with it. It just seems like maybe the reason that I didn't feel the same types of vibes as I did earlier in his process is because he's probably getting tired of this process. His phone's got to be ringing off the hook 24 hours a day. Just from coaches, from media members, from everybody. People are always hounding him on, hey, where are you going to go? Or, come here. And I think that it's getting old. So Tennessee's in a great spot down this home stretch. And that's what we want to hear, because adding a guy like that who should end up being plug and play, him with Lance Hurd's probably going to stay at left tackle. But you move him, you move David Sanders on over to right tackle. Now all of a sudden it's like, dude, we don't really have any, we don't have any question marks on this offensive line, because some of the guys that may be kind of playing tackle now or, have been moved around but came in as tackles, they can move to different spots on that offensive line. And I think that we're going to be really, really solid. So that was one of my questions heading into 2025. What is the roster going to look like once all these veterans leave? Sounds like it could be looking really, really good for our Volunteers. So there's a lot to be hopeful about with that right there. Now, before we go any further, please do us a really big favor. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And we are going to move on to the two Westlake prospects that came up on campus this weekend to get a glimpse of practice. And we'll start off with Juan Gaston. And you can see that he's listed at 6'7.5", 345 pounds. He's a 4-star on pretty much every single site. And right here, they're saying that UGA is the favorite to land his services. And I would probably have to agree right now. You know, he was very high up on Tennessee earlier in the process, but it does sound like he wants to go to a proven school that, you know, has put a lot of players into the league and things like that. He wants to go to a winning program. But I was paying very close attention to his interview with VolQuest over the weekend, and it sounds like he doesn't want to make a decision on what college he's going to be going to until like midway through his senior season. That's going to be great for our Volunteers, because if he wants to see a team that's dominant, that is in the mix as far as being a national title contender, he's going to see that with Tennessee. It's not going to be any question, okay, as far as we know, okay, as long as we stay relatively healthy, if we do what we are expecting to do, then at that point, we should be looking very, very dominant. And I think that he will end up choosing Tennessee, because he'll say, oh my gosh, everything that the coaches have been telling me is true. Like, they're saying that we are getting these offensive linemen better and the scheme fits you this way and that way. He's going to start to see it a lot more, because really what you want, okay, are the results. This is a results-based business on every single level. And once he sees those results, I think that he will be picking Tennessee. Coming from Westlake, a lot of those players don't typically go to Georgia. I don't know how many players they've ever had go to Georgia, but they usually go somewhere else. It's just something about teams in the city of Atlanta, or schools in the city of Atlanta, that don't necessarily send a whole lot of players off to UGA. And I don't necessarily know why, but I mean, that's just what it is. So I think that Tennessee is in a really good spot. All those players, you know, in that area are going to be very, very open-minded. I think that we can land Juan Gaston. Now, what is that going to mean if David Sanders commits early? Because I do think that he will end up committing definitely before the summer ends. And, you know, I think that it's going to be fine, because Juan's going to feel like, you know what, I can come in and I can fight for some time. That's going to push those upperclassmen, or what will end up being upperclassmen at that point. They're underclassmen right now, but it's going to push them. It's going to make them better. I don't know if he could come in and start at tackle, but the competition will be open. And if he can't start at tackle, then he could play guard, or he probably not center, but he could play guard. And I mean, we just get deeper and deeper. We get better and better. But I think that long term, okay, it may not look that great right now for our Volunteers with Juan Gaston, but I think long term, we are in a really, really good position. And that's not even to mention guys like Jalen Matthews, who I also think loves Tennessee, and he's going to be choosing a school coming up here pretty soon. Will he also commit to Tennessee? He's another one that we can kind of move in to guard, comes in as a tackle. And if he can't, you know, if he doesn't win that battle at tackle, you know, on our roster, then hey, you know, move him over to guard. But these are several blue chip caliber players that are just going to increase how dominant that offensive line is going to be. And as y'all know, on this channel, front seven for us is what drives the whole deal. If the front seven is dominant on both sides, forget about it, okay? With the schemes on offense and defense, special teams, national championships back to back to back to back to back. Listen, we're stacking them up now. We're getting to the point where I think that we are kind of like denying some players if they don't live up to, you know, the standards that we have at Tennessee. Before, we had to kind of reach for some guys. We had to get the most out of them. I don't think that we're at that point anymore. We're going to get some guys that are going to come in ready, but we've also got some guys that are already on the roster that have been ready and, you know, that have gotten better up under our system. So, I mean, again, we just get better and better as time goes on. Now, let's move on to Travis Smith. And you can see that he's listed at 6'3.5", 200 pounds. He has really good size. He's also considered to be going to the University of Georgia. Now, again, I don't know how true that is. I have heard some interviews from him, and it does sound like he really likes Georgia, but he's very similar to Juan Gaston in the fact that he wants to go to a program that can, you know, win instantly, and that he's going to have a chance to fight for some playing time early on. And as we've said on this channel several times, if you are a skill position player outside of running back or tight end, and you want to go to Georgia, you've got to look at what they've done from a production standpoint with those players. They just don't do a good job of it. Georgia has had pretty much the same offense that they've had, you know, since Mike Bobo started being the offensive coordinator there, which was what, like back in the late 90s or like early 2000s, whatever. It's been for a long time. And even though he wasn't there for the entire time, I mean, the offense has not really changed. So they're going to run the football. They're going to dump it off to their tight ends, and they're going to get it to their, outside real type playmakers on a very sparing basis. So I just think that if, Travis Smith looks at that, he says, okay, Tennessee is going to stretch the field. They're going to be more explosive with their wide receivers, and they're going to go hurry up. So I'm going to have more opportunities to get more touches. I think that it makes more sense to want to come to Tennessee's scheme versus Georgia's. They just don't know how to use dynamic playmakers. They just don't. They've been dominant and they've been good because of their front seven play, and they've been very conservative with everything else. Hey, we're not going to turn this ball over. We're going to play really good defense, and we're going to outmatch you physically. But they can't do that anymore. And I feel like the more that these players that are going to Georgia, like the same players that would have probably gone to like Alabama, Clemson, those types of schools back in the day, just because they're some of the best teams, they're going to start saying, okay, these teams are falling off, so I'm not going to go there now. Like, why would I continue to go to a team that isn't as prominent, and I'm not going to get the same amount of touches? They also won't be putting as many, players into the league because less and less of these blue chip players will be going there. I'm telling y'all, it won't happen obviously this season because their roster is pretty much already set, but we're already seeing several of the players that they had, committed to their school are choosing to go elsewhere. And there's a lot of players that are transferring out. It's just, there's a mass exodus at UGA, and give them, I would say, after this season, okay, because I think that they lose at least, I'm going to say they're going to at least lose 2 games, but maybe 3 to 4 games as well. It's just too many good teams on their schedule. This year, I feel like they're going to take a big step back. And once that happens, we'll see that this class, okay, for the 2025 season is going to go down, okay? They may be like barely top 10. And then after that, they're going to start to dwindle up out of that top 10 unless they change something with how they go out and target players, things like that, et cetera, et cetera. We already know that they're starting to pretty much offer whoever Tennessee's offering, because I think that they kind of got lazy on that front as far as trying to identify the real dogs, like that real talent, the players with the chip on their shoulder who might be a little bit underrated. But Tennessee's done a great job of that. And so now Georgia's trying to do it too because they can see what's happening, okay? Kirby Smart, as much as I can't stand him, he's not, a complete and total idiot. He understands what's happening, and he knows that football has changed. You cannot continue to think that you can just play bully ball with the way that the transfer portal and all that stuff is set up and think that you're going to continue to be a, relevant factor in college football. But anyway, I think that, guys like Travis Smith will see that. I think that guys like Juan Gaston will see that. And anyone else that is considering UGA that's a blue chip caliber player. So we'll start to get more and more of those guys. But Travis Smith sounds like a guy that maybe he's going to kind of drag his whole deal out a little bit longer. We'll see. I think that the longer that he puts everything off, the better chance that Tennessee has to land him. Now, we've got a lot of very good wide receivers coming in with this class as far as I can see. So maybe he looks at that room and says, okay, it's a little bit too deep. He also likes Auburn, some other places. I don't really care where he goes, okay, as long as it's not Georgia. Would love for it to be Tennessee, obviously, but if he doesn't come here, I don't think that it's the end of the world, but we would love to have him, okay? He's got great size. He's got great length. He's very physical, and he's going to make those tough catches. Something about his body posture and things like that reminds me a lot of Robert Meacham. And, I'm not saying he is going to be Meach, but, just a lot of the way that he moves around just puts me in the mind of him. So keep that in perspective as we are making the transition back to wide receiver U. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.